You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today is episode number 17, Burn. And coming to you from the mosquito-free suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the mosquito-infested place of Rhode Island, Johnny Big Ears Matola.
Was Big Ears one of them?
Big Ears was one of them.
Oh my God. If you're just joining us, John likes to start off each episode with by commandeering one of Martin Birch's many nicknames.
Yes, and making it my own.
In one of our early episodes, we talked about all of the different various nicknames he had, and I've forgotten pretty much everything except for the Wasp. So every week is like a new journey for me in rediscovering a nickname for good old Marty Birch.
Yeah. Yes, and the mosquito reference we won't get into, except I had a problem with them before the episode, so
there was a brief technical issue on my end and a brief sudden mosquito infestation on your end, and hopefully both of those things are resolved.
Had to do with a window that I accidentally left open. Oh my goodness. But anyways, so I think I've eradicated the infestation, so let's move on.
Let us hope. Okay, so I did get one comment, I got many comments, but one this week that was interesting, which is Rad from Russia wrote me an email, which is interesting in itself because I don't get a lot of emails. It's usually through Twitter or Instagram or something like that. And he was saying that I got something wrong, which is not surprising, when I was referred to Ian Hansford as an Elf roadie when he was in fact a Deep Purple roadie, Rad says. So my apologies on that. Also, listening to the last episode, I did make an audio issue that I'm trying to correct and get redone. It's only the very last 30 seconds of the episode, all the audio got kind of bunched together because I must have dragged some audio over and didn't adjust on the other end. So it's definitely not going to ruin the episode for you, but I am going to get it corrected. And trying something a little new this week with some audio, courtesy of my good friend Dr. Chris Warren, who modified a few of the my little audio effects chain for the vocals. So hopefully we'll be sounding a little bit more crisp this week.
I like crisp.
Crisp is good.
I enjoy crisp.
Crisp is very good. And then I got something wrong on last episode. We were talking about covers of Child in Time, and I mentioned Child in Time as being mentioned it as being on Machine Head, which obviously it's not. And I talked about there being a cover of it on the Remachined album, which obviously it wasn't. And nobody corrected me on that, which I'm surprised, but I heard it myself and I said, what the heck was I thinking? We obviously spent between those two albums, spent 5 hours worth of analysis on the episode about them. Well aware it's not on there, but sometimes, we're doing these a little late and we misspeak. The Ian Hansford thing, I just didn't know. So there we go. That's kind of the housekeeping out of the way. Big thanks to our patrons, Clay Wambacher and Steve Seaborg coming in the $5 tier, and Peter Gardeau, our beer patron and $3 tier member. Thank you so much. And hopefully you can, maybe if you can't make it to Mohegan Sun, he can just deliver it to your house or something. That might be asking a little too much. So
or just send the money instead.
Just $5 in an envelope.
Send me $5 and then I'll just go buy a beer with it and take a picture of myself,
enjoying the beverage.
Enjoying the beer.
So are you ready to talk about Burn or what?
Oh, hell yes.
17 episodes. I feel like this is the one that's been leading up to the most.
Oh, I'm so ready. I love this album.
All right. Well, there you have it. There's our analysis. We love this album. And see you next week.
Shortest episode ever.
What more is there to say, really? We talked a lot last episode about the acquiring of Hughes and Coverdale, and uncovered some good pictures and details about the acquisition of those two that you may not have known. So hopefully that was entertaining. This time we're going to just kind of go into, just a little bit leading up to the album, because we've covered a lot of how the band kind of came together, and mostly did that to avoid having the Burn episode be a 4-hour episode. So Coverdale comes on board, and Hughes come on board. Smoke on the Water is like in the top 10. Both the Made in Japan version and the Machine Head version are both in the top 10 at the same time. They're coming into the band being declared the #1 band in the world right now, as far as sales and all that go. Glenn Hughes arrives at Clearwell Castle, which we mentioned which I spent the last week not researching the proper pronunciation of. Gloucestershire, whatever it is. Our UK listeners can hate me. He gets to Clearwell Castle, and this is where they're going to start writing the album. And he picked a bedroom, and unbeknownst to him, Richie Blackmore, who, if you don't know, is quite a prankster, he had set up some speakers in the closet. So in the middle of the night, Glenn Hughes wakes up hearing like ghost sounds, like woo, and like kind of has a freak out. We talked in an earlier episode about his other hilarious prank of breaking down Roger Glover's door with an axe.
This one seems to be a little more reasonable.
This one is more in the realm of being a prank and not just like full-on assault, but
being like a horrifying psychopath.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not really a good prank as far as I'm concerned. I'm not much of a prankster, but that one doesn't really do it for me.
Hey, you ever hear of the old axe through the door?
That's hilarious. You should see the look on your face. It was great.
Oh, it's a
2 a.m. when I broke your door down with an axe.
Like, oh shit, you called 911? Oh.
So, well, this is backfired. So they wrote and rehearsed in the castle. They talked about one time where Coverdale just kind of froze up. I mean, he's like still like in this brand new, this brand new guy in this huge band. John Lord like took him aside, gave him a few drinks, played this Beatles melody to loosen him up. On September 1st, 1973, Coverdale was back up north celebrating getting this new gig, and Hughes, Pace, and Lord got together for a jam session with Hughes playing lead guitar, which is interesting. They recorded 2 songs, Don't Know Yet and Grand Funk Railroad, Some Kind of Wonderful.
Nice.
And they have not been released. I can't remember if it was these songs, or no, that might have been the songs from Who Do We Think We Are that John Lord was like, no, you can't release those. I don't know if these were of the similar thing, but I would love to hear that. I can imagine Glenn Hughes really doing a good job on some Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh yeah, that's really kind of like soulful type stuff, right up his alley.
It's in his wheelhouse for sure. And then on September 23rd, they announced their new lineup at the press event. We showed the picture of them kind of on the little kind of walkway top at the castle, announcing, and the press is saying, who the hell is this guy? On October 4th, Hughes accompanied Lord to perform with him on his Windows album. So this is all kind of going down at the same time. Yvonne Elliman, Peter York, Ray Fenwick, all those guys were there. And Richie actually went as a spectator and watched the performance, even though he refused to do it because it was like a classical thing. In November, they returned to Montreux, and this is where they do the old trick. They go to Montreux with the Rolling Stones mobile unit, and they're like, here we are, we're going to record our album in Montreux once again. Hughes contributed to songwriting, but because of like his contract with Trapeze had not yet expired, they weren't able to give him any actual credits on the album. So he got like I think he got some sort of other like bigger signing bonus or something to make up for the fact that he wasn't getting the credits. But I think that all got worked out like a year later. So the 30th anniversary release that came out, Hughes gets credits for all the tracks except for Sail Away, Mistreated, and A200. And the bonus track, which I don't think we're going to get into today. I think we'll probably save that for our end of the road Mark III, Mark IV wrap up. But the track Coronarius Redig, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right because I don't think I've ever said it out loud before.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. That one's that was just a bonus track. So on this album, John Lord starts getting a little more interested in synthesizers, which you can hear right away using some of the early Moog stuff. Lord and Pace agreed to give Ritchie more creative control in this lineup. They say Ritchie's kind of the final say in everything. That was kind of the arrangement within keeping him in the band. So that's what they do. And then Martin Birch really kind of takes Coverdale under his wing because Coverdale hadn't really recorded anything in a pro studio before. So he was very inexperienced, and Martin Birch, was really supportive of him, which was cool. Coverdale says his mind was blown just about the quality of the musicianship and everyone around him. He said he's really self-conscious. He'd stay up all night working on lyrics and making alternate versions of songs in case the band didn't like them. He's writing like 4 or 5 versions of every single song for lyrics. So they go and they set up on the top floor of the convention center in Montreux to record the album. Glenn has a lot of experience in the studio, unlike David, so he's able to help out as well. And John Lord says, David has always been a very self-confident man, and if he was overawed to be working with us, it only showed when we were talking between ourselves over a beer later, never during the actual recording. Martin Birch says, it was a much happier session than Who Do We Think We Are, which is probably not saying a lot. Everyone was actually talking to each other. And then Coverdale he was on these diet pills, and he kind of had like a kind of emotional breakdown at one point. He considered leaving the band, thinking he wasn't up to it and all that, but he got through that. I think once he lost the weight and kept it off, he kind of got ready to go. So that's just kind of a lead up to where the band is at as they go and they produce this album. And with that, we can kind of get into our traditional album art review. Got some good stuff here. So we've got the classic Burn album cover, and there it is right there for you. So you've got, in case you haven't, for some reason you're listening to this podcast but have never seen this album cover before, you've got candles of all 5 members of Deep Purple: Glenn Hughes, John Lord, Ritchie Blackmore, David Coverdale, and Ian Pace. And in the top, it was weird. We talk about how they didn't have a logo. It's like Deep Purple in like Arial font, not even centered. It's like a little off center, and then it says Burn in that very like swirly, pointy 70s kind of font.
Yeah, which the U and the N almost look like they're trying to be flames, but it's not, because it's like blue. It's like blue and white, which is not really flame colored.
Yeah, I never thought about that before, but yeah, maybe they're kind of like trying to be flames. And then you've got this purple mist that hovers at the bottom of it. And what's your take? What's your thoughts on this album cover?
I really like it. I mean, I think it's really cool. I think it's keeping in with what they were doing before. It's almost like in rock, which now looking at it, I'm going to guess that some of the what you're going to tell me if you've researched this album is that their actual faces are superimposed over the candles, which I can kind of see the staring at it, because when you told me that about In Rock, now I can't unsee it, is that I thought that they had like just painted or did like caricatures of their faces, but you said they actually like did like a cut and paste job of their faces on the Mount Rushmore thing. But this one, it kind of looks like it might be that as well. But
well, when we talked about a lot of the other albums. My kind of running commentary and repeated commentary is that, like, why didn't they just paint this? Like, why are they using photos? But this one, they are not using photos. It is that these are actual candles that were commissioned to be made by a place called Candlemaker Supplies. Not, they kind of went with the Deep Purple podcast route of not very creatively naming their company. So they created the candles, and they're just custom made candles. That's it. I always thought, like, I remember when I first got this album and I wasn't as familiar with Coverdale and Hughes, just kind of looking at it at first and not Lord and Blackmore are very easy. Blackmore's got the big pilgrim hat. Lord's got his big mustache. But I remember the other 3 just kind of being like, okay, which one's which? Because Pace's glasses are difficult to make out, and usually his hair is like falling much more over his face. And then Hughes and Coverdale, I was always like, well, which one's which? I mean, now there's Coverdale's there. Is Coverdale's up front, right, with John Lord?
Yeah, I feel like Coverdale is next to John Lord, Glenn Hughes is on the left, and Ian Pace is on the right, which Ian Pace looks like he looks like an old wizard or something. It doesn't even look like him. He's like, you know what I mean? He looks like an old troll or something. It doesn't even look like him.
It looks like kind of like a Jim Henson creation or something, you know?
But I mean, it's like he has like these guys, like Richie's got the pilgrim hat, John Lord's got the big walrus mustache, and Ian Pace has the glasses. So I mean, I don't like half of these albums. They don't even include his glasses on them. They're like his trademark almost, and they like almost unrecognizable on some of these album covers. But
yeah, I always thought like when I remember watching like early videos of, you know, when we were in high school of Ian Pace, and I was like, if he took those glasses off and walked by me on the street, I wouldn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
But yeah, John Lord and Blackmore are a lot more distinctive.
And Blackmore, of course, being like centered and highest up, so clearly indicating that he's the leader of the band.
Right. Yep.
While everybody else is kind of gathered around him. That's kind of what I get from it. But regardless, I think it's just a really cool album cover, and in keeping with the theme of all their other album covers, starting with Mark II, of just being like the faces of the band. So.
And every album cover except for Book of Taliesin has got the face.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, it does. So far, well,
in the Deep Purple album, they're kind of like there's like a little archway, and they're kind of like they put like a little photo of them in there, so it's very small, but everyone's represented on every cover except for Taliesin to this point.
Well, I mean, Concerto didn't have them on it, did it?
It did, because it's like the Albert Hall, and then like way in the distance in the seats, they're all just the 5 of them are sitting there.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, so far it's been one album, and then the next one, the only other one that doesn't have them on it from the 70s is Stormbringer. There's like no band picture at all on that one.
Yep.
But yeah, cool album cover. I like it.
Yeah, it's I always thought like it was not particularly well executed, but I like the idea of it, and the color of it is always really like jumps out at me. But I think to be able to carve wax candles in this detail is pretty impressive.
So there are actual photographs of them are not superimposed over the candle faces?
No, these are just these are candles that were carved and lit.
Wow. So, all right.
That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty neat.
That they could get that level of detail.
I mean, I have to say, like, my favorite album cover, even though it's not my favorite album, is going to be Fireball, is probably the best executed, if you're talking about execution.
Yeah, that's a cool cover.
Yeah. But this one is pretty good. But I mean, it kind of, if you think about it, keeps in line with that kind of cheesy 70s, like almost there but not quite there album cover art.
There's so many album covers like that are just kind of like almost throwaway. But it still does beg the question of like, couldn't they have achieved a better result with this, of actual like a painting, or like, you know, like you see these matte paintings that they, you know, 3 years after this, they'd be doing these matte paintings as backgrounds for Star Wars that are indistinguishable from reality. Like, you wonder if they could have just done some sort of like cool painting of the band as candles and got better results. At any rate, it's a great album cover. It is what it is. Again,
I put it to you. First Deep Purple album cover, $1 million. How much did this one cost?
Wasn't it 3 million? Or was it 3 million or 1.5 million? Or
I don't know, whatever it was. It's just like, if this did not cost as much as that one, I still want to know what the hell they did with the first one.
Right. You think just, you know, getting custom made candles is probably expensive for you or I, but, you know, I don't know how much they paid for these candles, but it couldn't have been more than a few $100.
Not $1 million.
Probably not $1 million. No, so that's the front cover. Back cover I thought was kind of cool because it's like the candles, and they're like burnt out, and the faces are kind of melted. The flames are out, and the wisps of smoke are just kind of sailing up into the air. And in the wisp of each bit of smoke is an actual photograph of the members. So you've got Glenn Hughes, John Lord, Richie Blackmore, David Coverdale, and Ian Pace all like kind of hovering like ghosts in the smoke over the burnt out candles, which is I
I
thought
think
was
that's really awesome. I really like that.
very cool to do that for a back cover. Interesting, they didn't have any gatefold for this album, so it's just the front and back cover, which is
Huh.
odd that they made that choice. And same thing for Stormbringer. They didn't bring it back again until Come Taste the Band.
Interesting.
Um,
Well, that's a really cool concept for the back. I really enjoy that. That's I like the way that they did their, starting with Mark II, of course, their albums.
yeah.
Like their back covers and their inserts when they had them, or gatefolds rather, and
Yeah, you
inserts.
talk about Fireball, you like you do the fold and it's got the fireball like going where the destination is for, or where the origin is for the fireball, and it's flying back onto the front cover. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of something, like I'm not trying to be one of those it's all the old days and vinyl and all that, but like it's kind of one of the cool things you don't really necessarily get with an MP3 is like I do miss that kind. You'd get a new CD or an album and you sit down, you put it on. And I remember the one I remember the most distinctly for some reason is Ozzy's No Rest for the Wicked. I remember getting that, putting it on and sitting at my desk and playing that album, and then just like opening the CD booklet, reading every line of lyrics like as the songs were going on. And to this day I still like know like all the lyrics to that song, to that whole album really well, because I was reading along while I was hearing it for the first time, and
Yep.
just reading any of the stories in there. It's always really cool to do that.
Yeah, I would do the same thing when I would get a new CD or a cassette, as it were, because I didn't transition over to CDs until later. But
So,
basically, if any of the medium at the time that we were younger like had an insert that had lyrics in it, I would do the
well,
same
the
thing.
cassette thing would just fold out and fold out.
Right,
Just
right,
this long.
right. So yeah, I would pop it in and I would just like unfurl it and just like sit there like at my desk or on my bed, and I would just like sit there and like read along the lyrics with the songs, even if sometimes I listened to the songs and I was just like, oh, this sucks, but it's because I think mine was like, I think it was Kiss Crazy Nights. I think might have been the first album that I bought with my own money
Mm-hmm.
when I had a job. And I want to say that at that point it came out like 5 years earlier, which now is like blows me away, but it's just like, so I guess it was kind of still new-ish. But anyways, it was like, I think it was at that time I didn't have it. It was like part of the catalog I didn't have. But since it was newer, it had all the lyrics in it. And even though I didn't really like that version of, like, I didn't really love 80s Kiss at the time, I still sat there and like read the whole lyric book while the album was going on, thinking like, boy, this stinks. I don't know why.
At least I have fonder memories of No Rest for the Wicked.
I think I might have done the same thing with that too, because No Rest for the Wicked was one of my first like purchases too, like early, because that came out right when I was getting into music. So
Yeah.
anything
Yeah, it was,
like
yeah.
around like 88, 87, 88 was when I started really getting into music. So,
Yeah. Cool.
but
So this was designed by Nesbitt Phipps and Froome, the same company that did In Rock. So you mentioned how it was
oh, that makes
got
sense.
the similarities. It was shot by Finn Costello, once again, who we talked about before. And so this was originally the original album cover, which we'll go back to here, was supposed to be. So Finn Costello shot this, was like, oh, let me show these guys what I have in mind for the album cover. So he puts these things up, does a few little things, shoots the thing, sends it into him like, here, what do you think? And then before he knows it, boom, the album's out with this on the cover. He's like,
So this was like his test shoot.
yeah, he's like, hey, I was trying to give you an idea. And they just used it. I guess that's kind of how things work. Funny, a friend of mine who does film scores was talking about it, the same thing. He did a score for a film. I think it was a short film, and he recorded like a little brief like sample, like, here's some ideas I have, and then the movie just comes out with that in it, and he's like, what the hell? Like,
That's great.
I didn't even get started yet. So yeah, so apparently he had something more elaborate in mind. And interestingly enough, in the May-June 1985 issue of Kerrang! Magazine, he did a reshoot with the original candles that he still had. And
Wow.
I read about this, and I couldn't figure out what. I searched everywhere, could not figure it out. And so, of course, I put it on Twitter, and our good friend Jorg Planer,
Oh man.
I think it took him 3 minutes this time to produce a scan of the thing. And then I was like, and I followed up later. I was like, oh, by the way, like, which issue was this? And he was like, the May-June 1985 issue. He was like, this guy is unbelievable, the amount of data this guy has on hand and how
Wealth of
fast.
knowledge. Yeah.
So I started out just by putting things out to anyone on Twitter. Now I just tag him. I'm like, Jorg, do you know about this? And he just immediately gets back to me. It's great. So anyway, here's the reshoot he did with the original candles in the magazine. So
Wow.
so you can see the lighting of it is much better. The candles are a little melted because that's what happened on the back cover of the album. But he kind of just was like saying, here I wanted to show you what the originals would have looked like if I had gotten some time to actually do it. So you've got the candles arranged not so symmetrically, but of course Richie's still on the top, and then you've got it's on like a gravelly dirt sort of like hilly sort of thing, and in the background is this kind of swirly dark and light purple background. Looks really cool. And
so that's like the concept, like that's how he kind of wanted to have the finished product be.
yeah, I think he was thinking something more along the lines of that. And he as the guy who shot the album cover, he got to keep the candles as like a little memento.
That's
And I think he still has them. So he relit them. This was 1985, so it would have been 11 years later. And
wow.
kind of interesting. That would be quite a collector's item to have. Those candles.
Yeah.
There's not like a lot of stuff like that. Like I'm not a big guy to go for like buying collector's items and things like that. But you know, if I had some money and I was a wealthy man, I would definitely put in a bid for those candles. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's that. And then there's also a little advertisement for the album here. Deep Purple's, it's funny because they kind of did the logo up top better than on the actual album cover. Purple is bigger. It's actually centered. It says a new album on Purple Records, #1 Deep Purple top album artists of the year in the USA, which is where they were riding off of the success of the Mark II lineup. Available on cassette and cartridge. What do they mean by do they mean 8-track? Is that what they mean by cartridge?
Probably.
Yeah. Maybe that's like a British thing. Maybe they called them cartridges. So there you go. That's the album. And then also we got the there's the little announcement photo, which I think we looked at last episode, of the band at Clairwell Castle looking down over the press and introducing David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. A cool photo. There's actually a similar photo, I believe, of Whitesnake in the exact same location.
Yeah.
And I think it's the lineup with Ian Pace and John Lord. So it's a popular place for the bands to hang out.
Yeah, I guess.
So that's the lead up, and now we just have we only have the album to get into now.
Let's do it.
You ready for this? All right, let's find these tracks. All right, so here we go. First track on the album, Burn.
What a great riff.
Incredible riff. And imagine being unsure of what this new lineup would bring and just hearing this killer riff to start it off.
And I love how John Lord doubles the riff with his keyboard.
Yes, not always the case, but it works really well in the song.
You know, I just realized how crazy Ian Pace's drumming is during the verses.
This song is basically a drum solo. It's interesting that, like, during the part where you should be focusing on the vocals, he's just going like a madman on the drum solo. And it works so well. On paper, that shouldn't work at all.
Yeah.
Like if you said, hey, David, during your verses, I'm going to just play every drum I possibly can. Like, you'd be like, no, don't do that. And they wrote the song in the dungeon of the castle.
Wow. And already you can hear how great Coverdale and Hughes' vocals like sound together.
Every time I hear this song, I remember the first time I heard it, and I was with you. And I always think about just like how blown away I was with this part in particular, where they switch it up. They have like a little bit of a chorus effect on their vocals there.
Such a dirty riff. I love it so much.
And interesting that they kind of start a new formula, which is Ritchie going into a solo over the main theme rather than them doing a weird breakdown or switching it up or going down tempo or something.
Yeah, this is much more straight ahead.
Yep. It's a great guitar solo too. Going back
Almost
to
like kind of like he's doing a Highway Star type of thing. Yep. I was just gonna say that.
this part here is brilliant. I love how they end his solo with like a composed section, but
Yeah, very like
guitar.
kind of medieval sounding, you know, very Ritchie.
They said this was one of the last songs they wrote for the album. Hughes wrote the middle parts that he sings, and
Yeah.
they knew they were going to divide up the vocals, and they figured that out kind of after the fact.
I just love how they keep repeating the riff. Like, I never get sick of hearing it. They just keep going back to it like over and over and over, and it's just so cool.
This whole middle section is great. Bouncing Hughes' vocals and then the solos. And then it goes into the keys.
Classic John Lord.
Oh. It does have a Highway Star vibe to it that I never really picked up on before.
Yeah.
This part is my favorite right here.
That just kind of mellow, like almost mirrors what Ritchie just did.
Yes, it's like it's the same instrumental part, but this time when he does that little high part.
Kind of foresees what we're going to see on the Stormbringer title track.
Yeah. I just love that Ritchie ends his solo with that composed piece, and then John Lord comes back with the same composed piece, but a different spin on it. Just the whole arrangement of the song too is so interesting, you know? It's a 6-minute song, but I feel like it just flies by.
Yeah.
I feel like some of those Mark II songs that were 6 minutes, you felt the 6 minutes. Like I love them, but some of them are a little long. I like how Ritchie mixes it up with the riffs. Like sometimes he plays it one way and sometimes he doesn't. Like I don't know if that's intentional.
Yeah, but when he plays that main riff, he definitely plays it dirty.
Yeah.
Like it growls. It's like it's not clean. Comes a classic Ian Pace ending.
All right.
Double crack.
It was interesting. Like I was trying to figure out if there was a pattern to it. I just think it might be, but sometimes it goes ba-da-na-na-na, ba-da-na-na-na, and sometimes it goes ba-na-na-na-na, ba-da-na-na-na.
Yeah,
like,
I think
and lets it ring out. Like I don't think he had quite like figured it all out yet, or like worked it out 100%. But it's cool. Like I like that it's not like somebody just stamped that riff once over the thing. It's just got so much personality to it.
Well, yeah, that's obvious. That's got to be Richie just doing whatever he's feeling that day.
Yep.
So definitely, like that song has to be a contender with Highway Star to be like one of the best opening tracks on Deep Purple album, and with that same kind of like really just driving feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of stuff to say about the song. I just couldn't bring myself to talk too much over it because it's so good. So Hughes said that there was not a lot of competition for vocals between him and Coverdale, which is great that they always worked out that way. He described it as, "Oh, you take this part. No, after you." Like they were just like very like, like gentlemanly about it.
Very cordial.
And not fighting over it. I guess Coverdale wrote like several sets of lyrics for this song, just like we talked about earlier. One was called "The Road," which sounds like a very Coverdale kind of song. And John Lord says David had some trouble with Richie because he wanted a certain type of lyric. He wanted songs about demonology, mythology, and that type of thing. So you can kind of see why he ended up with Dio as a singer at some point. That worked out well.
Of course.
Coverdale said, "I had some problems in finding the lyrics. I wanted them to have a modern setting, yet give a surrealist flavor. Richie and I wrote Burn, but John put the classical progression in it, which to me is brilliant." Hughes talks about during recording this song, he accidentally took PCP for the first time. He describes it. You wonder how much of this stuff is him just kind of like sugarcoating things, but he says his girlfriend sent him a letter in the mail, and he opened it up and there was like a powdery substance in it. He didn't know what it was, so he sniffed it and it ended up being PCP.
Oh my goodness.
And he said that he just saw like Richie's head was just like expanding like this giant balloon, and that
is he sure that wasn't just reality?
It could have been. And then Ian Pace like took him out for a walk to just kind of walk it off, whatever the heck it was.
Oh my God.
And then Blackmore says, "I came up with the riff on the spur of the moment while we were jamming. John took a tape home a few days later, and his wife at the time pointed out the similarity between that and a song called Fascinating Rhythm, which I'm sure you've heard before. The Gershwin song.
Maybe, I don't know.
It's very interesting. So here's Ella Fitzgerald doing Fascinating Rhythm, and we're going to hear that kind of similarity. You can't really hear it right away, but we're going to skip ahead a little bit, and you listen to the Fascinating Rhythm chorus part and how she sounds singing it, and you can kind of hear where the riff for Burn might have come from.
I'll have to sneak up to it someday and speak up to it. I hope it listens when I say, fascinating rhythm, you've got me on the go. Fascinating rhythm, I'm all a quiver. What a mess you're making.
Not hearing it.
That's a tough sell.
Yeah, fascinating rhythm.
I'll tell you, like if Burn is hidden somewhere in this, like he's a friggin' good musician, because I would have never in a million years been able to pick this out if I just heard this.
Yeah, it's not a
I mean, I can hear it now, da, 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 and then it turns around and it becomes the riff to one of the greatest rock songs of all time.
Right. When you play some of the earlier stuff that Richie stole, like Child in Time and Black Knight and stuff like that, it's very obvious. This one is like, in this one, he claims it's just a similarity. It's not really. It wasn't. Richie is very open to admitting what he stole and what he didn't. So I think it was just kind of a coincidence, but you can hear it like kind of where it could have been influenced by that, maybe subconsciously.
This was also an influence for, and I don't know if you had that pulled up ahead of time or if you could pull this up, but it was an influence for one of my favorite Kiss songs, "I Stole Your Love."
Burn was an influence for that?
Yeah, and you could directly hear it, which is like I didn't even realize it until somebody said that that riff was just like derived from Burn, and I was like, oh, it is.
Huh. Well, let's take a listen. What's the name of it again?
"I Stole Your Love" from
Stole Your Love.
from 1977's Love Gun.
Oh, sorry, we're getting sorry, we got an ad there.
Whoops.
Okay. Start out with that riff. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, and I mean Paul Stanley admitted that. He's like, yeah, the riff for this was inspired by Burn, which is a very, very similar.
Yeah, that's great.
And I mean that could probably explain why it's one of my favorite Kiss songs, because it's one of my favorite Deep Purple songs, because
Yeah.
it's a very similar riff.
You take
So-
a good riff and turn it into another good riff.
Yeah, and take Ella Fitzgerald's vocals and turn it into a great riff. And
Ella Fitzgerald is just, she's the godmother of heavy metal. Or hard rock, at least.
the great godmother of heavy metal. Oh my God. Well, this is easily like, just like a classic song.
Yeah,
So
it's fantastic.
anyways, onto our ratings.
Mhm.
So Burn, I gave it a 4. You gave it a 3.
No, I put through all threes in there as a joke.
Oh, you bastard. Yeah, that's because earlier this week I had like rated all of these songs, and for our listeners, Nate texted me and said, you gave everything on Burn a 4, like 2 question marks, 3 exclamation points. And I'm like, yes. So I feel that this was all ratings are subject to change. I may change my mind, but I feel at a base level, and I listened to this album a few times, trying to be like, maybe this wasn't as good as I thought, but I couldn't give it any lower than a 4. Maybe I'll give something a 3.5. I don't know. But what is your true feelings on Burn?
I give it a 5. No question. No question at all.
Oh, you bastard. Staging me.
Not upstaging. Didn't work out well with Mary Long. I can't, like, to me this is like the Mark III song. It does the whole composition of the song, the riff, the way the arrangement of the song, the way it goes in, like I talked about, it goes into the little medieval sounding section with him doing his solo and then his take on it, and then John doing his solo and his take on it. It's brilliantly written, performed, and arranged. It showcases great harmonies between Coverdale and Hughes. Also, them switching off vocals. It's like the blueprint. It just shows you like, here's what you're in for with the Mark III lineup. And I couldn't, in good conscience, give it anything less than a 5. I think it's a perfect song.
Well, I feel like coming off of Who Do We Think We Are, you can tell that they were uninspired, because clearly the playing on this, even from like the guys that were already in the band before, like Richie alone, I mean, if you heard Who Do We Think We Are, you're just like, wow, he's lost it. Like, he's no good. And then you hear this and you're like, oh, damn, like, just, it's like right away, just classic out of the gate.
You can hear the passion in his playing. Like, yeah, you listen to any guitar solo off of Who Do You Think We Are, and then you play his guitar solo on Burn, and you're like, oh, that he's back. Like, he's into it again. And
Yeah.
Blackmore, even when he's not into it, he can throw together a really good one-take solo, but he's not really good at faking the. You can tell if you know him that the enthusiasm's not there, and it's
Oh,
back
yeah.
here, and it shows. So yeah,
I mean,
I
just
never questioned for a second giving this anything other than a 5. Like, I didn't agonize over it. It's just instant 5 for me.
wow. Next.
You're still holding on to those 5s. You just won't refuse to give them out.
I don't know. I don't know. Have I given a 5 to anything yet?
You have not given a 5 to anything yet.
Oh, well, maybe. Well, who knows? Maybe I will. I've given a 4.5.
Yeah,
Given a
yeah,
lot of 4.5s.
you'll notice that that's not a 5.
It's almost.
It
All
is
right. Well.
a 5.
All right. Well. Anyways, next.
All right, next track. Might Just Take Your Life. The great little organ opener by John Lord.
One of my favorites. I love this song. And again, the guitar doubles the organ, which is awesome.
And the song was obviously started as a John Lord just playing this organ riff, and everyone built everything around it.
Yeah, but it's just so full and great. Just
Yep.
the riff just tugs along, kicks.
Sounds meaty.
I mean, Coverdale starts to settle into like what he does best, which is being a blues singer. Very bluesy.
Yep. They wrote this song at Clearwell Castle with a different set of lyrics and a chorus about rock and roll. So it's very like kind of basic rock song, and they changed it at the last minute. Hughes's backup there is so good. The lyrics tell the story about how Coverdale and Hughes ended up in Deep Purple. Talks about people who laughed behind their backs when they talked of joining the band.
Wow.
And the tambourine's back. Is this the first time we've heard tambourine since like Fireball?
Probably.
It's still in the left channel. I notice only when I'm doing the show. It's always tambourine's always in the left channel.
Interesting.
And this was released as a single 3 days before the album on February 12th, and it did not chart.
Oh, that's crazy. What a great song to be a single.
Coverdale's vocal was so good on this. The B-side for it was Coronarius Redig. And it was their first UK single since Never Before.
I mean,
I don't think they released Smoke on the Water.
Coverdale and Hughes' chorus here is just blends together so well, their vocals. It's so
great.
good.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, move over, Rover. Glenn Hughes is taking over. Here he goes. And it's still kind of bluesy, but he gets it a little funkier.
Yep. And I think the key changes pretty soon.
And then they go up a step or a half a step or whatever.
A little modulation there. I think it must be after the solo.
Oh, so good, the chorus.
Yeah, their voices together were so great. Great organ solo. It's a shame that Hughes and Coverdale never really did anything else together.
Yeah.
They're just so
I mean-
good together.
I mean, he did bring in like Hughes to sing some backups on like a later album in Whitesnake, but I mean, you could barely tell.
Yeah, they should have collaborated on something.
Oh yeah.
Great little fade out. And no guitar solo.
Oh,
So we go between Our Lady, Burn, and this. You got 2 of the last 3 Deep Purple tracks with no guitar solo. Uncharacteristic. And Steve Pilkington, in his great book, On Track with Deep Purple and Rainbow, he says, the lyric is the first example of what would become something of a Coverdale trademark of the drifter without a home and needing no friend song. There'd be many variations on this over the years.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting. And then this is another one that they say was inspired by another song. And this one's by The Band. Big shout out to Rye from the Sabbath Bloody podcast, because I know his favorite band is The Band. But The Band, Chest Fever. Let's listen to this. Hear that dirty organ sound for sure. So you can hear that. Kind of a bluesy little organ riff going there, so this might have been some inspiration for John Lord. I gotta listen to some more The Band. I'm not very familiar with them, but every time I hear something by them, I'm like, oh yeah, they're really good.
Deep Purple did it better. I mean, that's why we love this song, and I am not as interested in that song.
I would pick up that album and give it a spin for sure.
Yeah, why not? But this song's better. So, yeah, it kind of blows me away how, like, Glenn Hughes, they had their eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
They brought him into the band. Coverdale comes out of nowhere. He's unknown, and they just put these guys together, and like somehow their voices together just work so well. It's
such a great dynamic, because you've got like that kind of Glenn Hughes has got that smooth high register voice, and then Coverdale's got that lower, more gravelly almost sounding voice, and together they EQ together so well. Sometimes if 2 people sound very, kind of like Lennon and McCartney, very, very different voices. Lennon was kind of a more nasally, kind of straightforward voice, and Paul McCartney was a little bit more smooth and melodic. And when you put them together, just they blend together to create something completely different.
Yeah, you just can't take into account. I mean, they weren't sitting there planning it out, but right. You just think about, okay, you have this really kind of like bluesy, like deep singer like Coverdale, and then this even like not even like an.
I was pouring myself some more beer. Sounded like I was going to the bathroom.
It's like John's analysis is so good. I'll just piss while he's saying it.
Into like a porcelain bowl.
I can't leave. I have to stay here and listen, but I really have to go.
I have my little mute switch. I was like, I don't need to hit it. You're not going to hear this on the mic.
Wrong.
Cheers.
But yeah, Coverdale has that really deep, soulful, bluesy voice, and then Hughes has even beyond, like, because it would be easy to say that he was an Ian Gillan type singer, but he's not. The only way that he is that they can both hit the higher register, but
exactly.
His vocals are soaring vocals. They're soulful. They're like funky at times and everything. And to think that a bluesy and a funky singer could get together and sound that good, it almost, like, if you think about it on paper, as you said before, that shouldn't work.
Yeah.
You're just like, wow, that sounds like an awful idea, but it's like the best idea ever. The tragedy is that these guys did not do like a duet album like like friggin' Glenn Hughes did like what, like 2 or 3 albums with Tony Iommi, I would have easily traded like those for like an album with him and Glenn Hughes. Or like, you know, Coverdale Hughes instead of Coverdale Page. Like I would have taken that any day of the week. But yeah, it's too bad they didn't.
It's interesting, like the sometimes the doesn't work on paper thing works out beautifully, and the opposite's also true, because you know, you take this like super group of all these great guys and you put them together and you're like,
Yeah, pretty much.
It doesn't, you know, it doesn't always work that way, you know, and it's the same is true. You don't know what the you know, the sum, what am I trying to say? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, you know?
Yeah, I
So,
gotcha.
is that the expression I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And that's kind of true of this, you know, you on paper, who knows, but it just works like magic when you put it together.
Absolutely. So, so this is another one that I give a 4.5. Love this song. It's great.
Yep, I gave it 4. I'm going to stick with 4 on that one. I really like it.
Okay.
Now, next track up is Lay Down, Stay Down.
Oh, you better. You better do it, baby.
This really classic Blackmore kind of beginning. And so far, all 3 of these songs have been written by all 5 band members. Great switch off here for the first time you kind of seen them switch off verses, rather than having just Hughes just take a bridge or whatever.
Yeah. Really love this part.
This is so
It's
upbeat.
bluesy.
Upbeat bluesy, yep.
It is. It's like the song is really rocking, but that bridge is very like, yeah, upbeat bluesy.
Ian Pace says this is his favorite song on the album.
Yeah.
It was also the first song they recorded for the album.
Yeah, just like it's a really just driving, like classic Ritchie riff, just,
Like the cowbell too on the right channel there.
yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I love they trade verses and then they sing them together. And Coverdale's singing like very low key when Glenn Hughes is belting it out, and that works really well.
Yeah.
Roger Waters would do a lot of that in Pink Floyd, although he'd do both parts. He'd like scream one part and speak the other and blend them together, and it worked really well. The original title of the song is That's All Right. It's a song about groupies, apparently. Kind of cheapens it a little bit. But I guess you'll have that in the 70s.
Another, obviously, improvised Ritchie solo, but a great improvised Ritchie solo.
Coverdale said this was one of the first sets of lyrics he ever wrote.
Really?
Because he was really a singer. He was doing mostly covers before. He wasn't writing lyrics necessarily. I think it was a new thing for him for Deep Purple, but he did it really well.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. I love how he goes into this part with another guitar.
So good. That double track guitar is great. And I like that they opted for the piano on this album a little bit more, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think he busted out the piano enough in Mark II.
Well, I mean, the piano really gives it really a bluesy rockabilly type feel, you know?
Yeah, like we heard on, what song was it where they did the alternate take with the piano? Is it Fireball?
No, wasn't it Speed King?
Oh, Speed King. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep. Great blues song.
Oh yeah. And the thing is that these songs aren't obvious blues songs, you know? It's
Yes.
like
Yep.
they have those elements in there. They're rocking. It's not a lazy blues song like Place in Line.
Yeah.
Where they you know, you could tell they were just like, hey, why don't we go nah, 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 nah. It's
Yeah.
like
Dum,
no.
dum, dum, dum. Yeah, it's just yeah, I feel like on this there's a couple of songs on this album. We'll get to one a little later with what's going on here, but where they're just like, it's almost like they're like, well, we need another song for the album, let's do a blues song, but they do it so well and make it so interesting with the, like, it's genius, like that they had the Coverdale verse, the Hughes verse, and the verse with both of them singing in unison. It's just it makes it so interesting. It's not like Place in Line.
And it's great because Coverdale is right at home singing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then Glenn Hughes sings it, and he can sing blues stuff great. Like he sings over these verses and everything, but it's like he brings another dimension to it. Like it's bluesy, but it's soulful at the same time. Like it works. That's what just makes this music so good and so timeless.
Yep.
I think so. So that one gets a solid 4 from me.
Yeah, I'm going with the same. I'm going with a 4 on this one.
Because it's definitely good. I love it.
All right. Next up, we got Sail Away. This one is written by only Blackmore and Coverdale. So Sail Away.
Oh, wow. This song blows me away because this riff is so unusual.
And I, for the longest time, thought that this riff was done on a synth, but it's bass and guitar together, and you can hear the synth and the hard pan on left and right. And it just sounds, the tone on the guitar and the bass sounds so, it doesn't sound like a guitar and a bass.
It growls.
Yes.
And I mean, Coverdale is right at home here. This is like deep into the bluesy stuff.
Another great trading off of vocals here. This song has always just done it for me. I don't know what it is about it. Tambourine again. I like he talks about getting old in the song. Give me a break. It's like 22.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, I always thought that Coverdale was in his 40s when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know why.
Well, I think we got into Coverdale, or our first introduction to him anyway, was when he was in his 40s, and then we listened to stuff from 15 years before that, and we're like, oh, he's always just been in his 40s. He's just a horny 40-year-old. Ritchie had been holding out on this riff. This is one of the ones that he was like, I'm not going to give this to Mark II because I'm going to use it for my solo album. And then when Mark II fell apart, he's like, well, I guess I'll use it with Deep Purple now.
It does sound like a very early Rainbow riff. It sounds like something that he could have used on the first Rainbow album.
Sure.
There are actually a couple of spots in here on the album, which I'll pick them out later, where some of his guitar parts sound very Rainbow-ish.
Yeah, I mean, his album came out, what, a year before the Rainbow album?
Yeah, just a very, like, hint of things to come. You know, maybe where his playing was at the time.
They said they changed the lyrics to the verse on this in the studio because they weren't happy with them. It's at the last minute.
Wow.
And Coverdale puts this up as being like one of the real true examples of the direction that the band was headed. And Coverdale sings this in a very low voice, and he didn't like the way it sounded, but John and Richie convinced him that it sounded great and keep it that way.
Yeah, well, they were right. Oh, you know what? It's Richie's guitar solo after this. It sounds very Rainbow-ish.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
He does a lot of this, like, on the first Rainbow album. Very melodic.
And I like that it's just very short and understated, too. He's not, like, trying to do, like, a big, long, extended jam on it. Something away that riff that like how it goes so low like that. Like I wonder if they down tuned for that. It just sounds so low that I think that's why I always thought it was a synth.
You just got a lot of stuff going on in the background too.
You've got the organ kind of holding notes, and you've got Richie kind of doing some chord stuff, and then Glenn Hughes keeping that riff going. It's really, really good. Said Blackmore used a synth hi-fi guitar synthesizer for the slide part of the solo. I don't know what that means. Might mean something to somebody. That's Hughes that says that, right?
Yeah, but I think Coverdale just said it there.
Oh, that was Coverdale that said that?
Pretty sure he did, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that riff because it's so unusual, but it's so like just like it's this growling, like deep, like riff. It's just so cool.
That's why I always thought, until I started really listening to it critically for this, I thought it was I just assumed it was like more synth driven, and it's not really any synth at all in the riff. The synth is just kind of giving that pad in the background and just kind of fattening the whole thing out.
Yeah, really fat. That's a good word for it. It's fat.
It's such a great sound, though. It just the whole tone of it is awesome.
So I would say my only, if I had to have a, not really a gripe, but you know what, it would have been, I would have liked to have seen the song, like this song, I think it would have been better if Coverdale sang the whole thing and Hughes just did the chorus with them, because I think this is the type of thing where I would have liked to hear Coverdale sing the whole thing because it was better suited to him. Like when Hughes took over the second verse, not that I ever hated it or anything, but I think in hindsight, it would have made it a lot better if he just kept going with that, because this is really like more in his wheelhouse, this type of song.
Did Whitesnake do this on the Purple
album? Maybe. I don't know. I know that Coverdale did do some songs that Hughes sang, and it didn't really work out.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. He did do it on the Purple album.
Yeah.
So that'd be interested. That'd be a great one to cover one day as well. But I'd like to. I've listened to that album on and off but I
Yeah.
haven't given it a real critical listen, and I'd love to because that would be an interesting one to see.
I liked it, but I just think that present day Coverdale's vocals are a little too gravelly for me to enjoy these songs being redone. It's his vocals are not as, or his voice isn't as clean as it used to be, and I mean, understandably so. It's not a knock on him at all.
He's like 70 years old, yeah.
But I mean, his voice is definitely like when I saw him live and everything, he still did awesome, but he didn't hit those like the 80s high notes the way he did. And he certainly didn't do any of these songs or, early Whitesnake songs. But the point being is that going back and doing some of these songs, I didn't like him as much just because he's a little more like, I guess, edgier now, like than in these songs. And a lot of it's come with probably age and strain on his voice and everything. And he makes it work for him now, but it's just like a lot of the Purple redo stuff. I'm just like, just listen to the originals. But it was an interesting album to listen to. I mean, I love the fact that he acknowledged this era of the band.
Yeah, it's great, and that sort of stuff is one of those things. Like, it's a great thing. It's maybe not something you're gonna listen to every day, but it's a great kind of reference material or something to check out as like a fun project. All right, so what's your rating for Sail Away?
I give it a 4.
All right, I'm giving it 4.5 Pilgrim Hats.
Ooh. Okay.
I do really, really love that. Just the whole riff in it is so great. It's one of those ones I find myself, even if I've gone a year without listening to this album, I'd occasionally just like catch myself humming this to myself,
Yeah, no, I definitely like took away a half just because of what I said before, as I would have liked to have heard Coverdale sing the whole thing. But I mean, that's just minor. That's just nitpicking.
All right, taking away the buckle for that. All right, next up, You Fool No One.
Easily one of my favorites ever.
Really?
Yep. Love this song.
Well, that's great. Really just working that cowbell to death.
He tortured that cowbell. Again, perfect Coverdale Hughes blend of vocals.
Yeah, it's immaculate.
And I mean, the freaking riff to this is unbelievable. Listen to what Richie is playing during the verse.
And John, too. You can hear John really hard on the right speaker.
Yeah.
That percussive John Lord organ. So Ian
comes.
Oh, this is so good. So Ian Pace obviously came up with this drum pattern, and they based the song around that.
Oh yeah, just another classic Ian Pace.
I was reading about how Ian Pace was dripping with sweat after 4 takes and was like super pissed off that nobody else in the band was able to keep up with him, and he threatened to walk out if they didn't get it on the next take, and this is the take they got it on.
Wow.
I love this. Such. I love how he starts off that little riff thing on like the wrong pickup setting, and then he switches it after one progression. He switches it up to the.
This is just a fantastic solo section. I just love this so much. I mean, you just hear Glenn Hughes just like funking out in the back, and John Lord just like smacking the keys, and
It's another one that kind of has an immigrant song kind of vibe to it with the drums. And obviously, this takes the place of The Mule, and in my opinion is a far better song.
Yeah.
The Mule bores me. It's very repetitive, and this one just has all these great breaks like this.
Oh, it was brilliant.
And I love how they sing the verse together, and then like Hughes kind of sings the chorus by himself. It's an interesting. I mean, normally it would be reversed. But then here, Coverdale takes it on this one. And this is one of the ones that they would do live. It'd be like a 15-minute song.
Oh, yeah.
They'd cram in the Ian Pace drum solo and just go crazy on it.
Just love the Richie's playing, and the effect on his guitar is so awesome. He had like a little phase or a flange on it or something.
Yeah. It might be a flange.
Well, either way, I mean, it's just like there's I can't say enough about that song. I mean, it's like I actually like I don't love a lot of live versions of songs, but I mean the like any live versions of this song I think are like even better. Like I love hearing this version, but then you hear like the
California
like
Jam.
the California Jam, or even live in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like I just love hearing the live version of these songs, of this song rather. It's just like one of them that I don't even say I prefer it over this, but sometimes like I'll just be in the mood to hear it. It's even better because you'll have like an extended Richie solo. After the solo section, that'll be like where he does his guitar solo, and it's, you know, Richie, it's never the same thing. So it's just like there's some great versions of it. So what say you?
For this one, I give it four Pilgrim Hats. I think it's a great song. I really love that it replaces the Mule. I just you know, that no offense intended towards the Mule, but I just find like I feel like this takes everything that song was trying to do and then ups the ante on all of it and makes it so much more interesting.
Yeah.
The Mule was just this very plodding, you know, repetitive song. If you listen to the first 10 seconds of the song, you've heard the whole song basically. This has different parts. You've got Hughes and Coverdale singing together. You've got Hughes taking a chorus and Coverdale taking a chorus, which is very inventive, rather than them singing the chorus together. Although I guess you could call the part they sing together the chorus, and maybe the other part's a bridge. I don't know. It's an unusual arrangement for a song, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. So as you can tell, the way I've been gushing over it, this song gets the elusive 5 Pilgrim Hats from me.
5 Pilgrim Hats.
I gave out my first 5, baby.
Oh my goodness! I feel like we've crossed a major milestone.
This is how much I love this song. This has been always been one of my favorite Deep Purple songs.
It's great. It's really, really good. I feel like I should give it 3 hats now to pay you back for Mary Long.
Yeah, but we're not going to argue about like if this song sucks.
No.
If anything, I think this would probably be. This is probably the episode we're most excited about, but would probably be the most boring for everybody because we're not going to be arguing over it, or like disagreeing, like heartily disagreeing, because it's like
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can give it 1 and I could give it 5 or vice versa. It's like, it is what it is. Like,
Oh, of
you're
course.
feeling it, you're feeling it. And I am so happy for you that you gave that 5 stars.
It is. It's one
Or
of my
I'm sorry, 5 pilgrim hats.
5. Yeah. I mean, there's like, you know why? Because there's never a time when this song comes on where I'm like, nah, I don't want to hear it today. Like every time it comes on, I want to hear it.
Yep.
You know how you have your favorite songs and sometimes you're just not into it? Like I'm never not into this song. Like there are times where you're like, I've heard it enough. I'll give it a rest. This never.
That's how I feel about Burn. And when we talked about one of our very first episodes, there was Glenn Hughes was doing an interview show on the BBC. So I recorded it. I like set up just the studio and I just played it. It was streaming, so I recorded it so I could listen to it later. And they start going into it, and then all of a sudden they just start playing Burn. I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna listen to Burn now. Like there's no chance I'm just gonna skip past this. I'm just gonna listen to all of Burn in all 6 minutes, and then boom, into the interview. Like I once I heard that one note, it's over. I gotta listen to the whole thing. True. Okay, next up. Well, I'm sorry, that's a 5-star song. So anything else you wanted to say? I don't want to.
No, in case anybody wasn't paying attention, I love that song. Okay.
Thank you. That helps.
Okay.
Okay. Next track up is What's Going On Here? Great guitar tone from Richie on the song.
Just another great like rockin' song. John Lord pulls out the piano.
It's another one that should be and probably was filler, but they take this blues 145 thing and make it into something really special.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean if this is album filler for Burn, then it's damn good filler.
Even filler on Burn is good. What I love about it is they trade off verses, and then for the first 2 verses after they sing the verse, Blackmore does a guitar lick, and then on the third one, sorry, I had to leave that. On the third one, John Lord plays piano, and then on the fourth one, Richie comes back. So you hear Richie right here. Then Glenn. I'm sorry, Coverdale. Then it's going to go to Hughes. And John Lord's going to play a piano lick.
Interesting.
Then back to Coverdale. And then a guitar again. So it's like very interesting arrangement. It's not just like 1-4-5, here we go.
So it's almost like Richie and Coverdale are pairing up and John Lord and Hughes are pairing up for their verses.
Yeah, but except it's like Coverdale and Hughes are switching, but
it's not even.
Blackmore gets 3 of the 4. It's an unusual arrangement. It's really interesting.
Wow, what a great sounding solo.
I always love that part.
But it's almost like it's slightly overdriven too.
Mm-hmm. And then they just choose not to put any lyrics here. They just keep it instrumental. There he comes. There's so much room for this song to just be generic filler, and they do so much interesting stuff with it. But on the surface, it's a very simple 1-4-5 blues song. Like,
but I mean, you could picture these guys just being in a bar playing this.
Yes. You could also see them doing this in Mark II towards the end and just phoning it in.
Yeah.
Or just arranging this in a way that was just completely made it generic. and they sing like Hughes and Coverdale sing it with so much energy.
Yeah.
You can't not love it. Listen to their voices here.
Woo! They just turned the whole thing around. Now Richie's playing after Glenn sings.
Yep, it's really the whole genius in the song is the arrangement.
Yeah. And I mean the performances are awesome too.
Oh, everyone's completely on. The vocals in particular, there's so much passion in what they're singing. Great ending too. I love this part right here. Cause it's like Richie plays, it's like he plays the opening to Mistreated, you know, like and he like ends it like that, and it's like this precursor to like what's gonna come. He's just like and you're like, oh, okay, and then the song ends, and then the first thing you hear after that is Mistreated. It's just such a like, I never knew if that was intentional or not, but at any rate, it works really well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, what else is there to say about this song? I mean, it's like you said, it could have easily been a filler song, and sometimes you think of it that way if you just kind of are listening to the album as a whole, but it's really not. It's just, I think at this point we can say that like Hughes and Coverdale coming in, like Coverdale was so inexperienced and probably excited to do a good job that he had that passion, and I mean Glenn Hughes just kind of always did. I mean, he was still new too. I mean, he was still like really young, and like it just both of them got into the biggest band like in the world, and you could tell that they're excited through that. And even Richie, even his guitar solo is like you said that he, like some people you can tell by the look on their face when they're annoyed, and it's like you can tell by Richie's guitar playing whether he's into it or not, and you could tell that he's into it and he's having a good time. Like all of them, everybody. So it's just like it's definitely like this song you can look at and be like, yeah, now I see the revival of the band. Like everybody's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, you see it again. You see it when Gillan and Glover join the first time. You see it when Hughes and Coverdale come in. You see it when Tommy Bolin comes in. You see it when Satriani comes in. There's anytime you see it when Morse comes in. Anytime there's this change, it's like, oh my God, all this tension is gone and there's not all this fighting and people are just more into it.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
So what's going on here? So yeah, that's a solid song, a solid 4 from me.
Yeah, I'm giving it 4 Pilgrim Hats as well. I toyed with giving it 4.5 just because I think like I said, it's a standard blues song that's got such an interesting arrangement. They did so much interesting stuff with it that I almost could go there, but I'm going to I think I'm gonna leave it at a 4.
And I think that like now being like next being we're almost done with the album, being 6 songs into it, we have been talking more about how this album is so bluesy. When Hughes and Coverdale joined, they accused, basically, whether it's accused or just the reviews were that they got too funky, and it's like, I'm not hearing it on Burn anyways. I mean, yeah, there were some elements of it, but if anything, they got way more bluesy.
They did get more bluesy, and they do get a lot more funky on Stormbringer.
Well, I'm not going to argue that, but I mean, it's like if they're going to talk about like Hughes bringing a lot of funkiness right away to the album, it's like he does a little bit, but it's definitely overwhelmingly more bluesy, which I think is a great sound for them because, I mean, like it just all blends together so well. And again, it shouldn't, if you think about it, because in some songs you have the bluesiness of like the riff and Coverdale's vocals, and then you have some kind of funky soulfulness from Glenn Hughes, and then Richie will throw in like some kind of like Snake Charmer riff, and you're just like, what the hell is going on right now? But it's like it all works though.
That's what I don't understand about Blackmore. Like
what is it?
that's the thing that like makes it great, is like having a having John Lord with this classical background and having Richie vacillate between rock, blues, and medieval music, and having Hughes be the funk element and Coverdale be the blues. All of these different aspects gelling together is what makes things interesting. And just getting 5 rock guys together or 5 funk guys together, it's like, well, what are they going to do? They're all going to play funk. But if you've got like a medieval guitar part and a jazz organ with a funky soul singer on top of it, it's like that's what makes things cool
and original, and
yes,
and stands the test of time. And don't forget about Ian Pace either. He's not just doing regular holding down the beat. He's doing like a drum solo for the verses of Burn, and he's like torturing the hell out of that cowbell and You Fool No One, and he's doing all this crazy stuff in the background, so he shouldn't be forgotten either. I mean, they're just
not at all.
All these guys together, I would like argue, are like a perfect band.
Yeah, I think the Mark III lineup, if honestly, if Richie just could have gotten it together with, I mean, he had personal things going on too, and as we'll see, it was Stormbringer, but if he could have just kind of gotten past that, I think they could have done great things. But he wasn't feeling it. He went on and did his own thing and did a great job of it. So that's all that matters.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we had a little preview at the very, very end of what's going on here to what we're about to hear.
With your version.
I don't think you even have to hear it now. You totally get the idea. All right, here we go. Mistreated.
Another great song.
And again, I hate to be that guy, but you gotta hear them do this live. The California Jam one to me is untouchable.
Oh yeah, this is another one that live, I love to hear the song live as well.
And he's done it great. He's done live versions with, I think, he hasn't been with a ton of groups, but they did a great job with Rainbow doing this live too,
Yeah. Now here's where Coverdale is right at home.
Oh, he shines on this song.
I mean, even the lyrics are just bluesy. Like, I've been mistreated. He's just going back to the roots of the blues. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of like my baby left me, And
I'm glad that they chose to go with just him singing this song.
It makes perfect sense to have him singing this by himself.
I mean, this is like Coverdale masterpiece.
It's great because this is like such a bluesy vocal, but musically it's not a straightforward blues song.
Yeah.
They said they recorded this from 11 p.m. to 7:30 a.m.
Oof.
I know. Hell, they were in their 20s. That just sounds awful now.
I'd be like, I gotta get to bed. I'll record the vocals when you guys get like when I get up. You guys do the music tonight. I'll get up and the vocals tomorrow morning.
So when they first played this back to Coverdale, he thought it was terrible. He was so upset. He started when the first version of it, I guess, that they did.
Yeah.
And he said it was so bad that he sat down and he cried.
Oh my God.
He wanted it to be so good, but it just wasn't what he was thinking. And then the
Wow.
next night, when they had the session going from 11 to 7, they nailed it.
Coverdale was so hard on himself.
Well, I mean, how could you not be coming into this band with that at 22 or 23, however old he was?
Well, he freaking nailed it.
Oh, he totally did.
You know what I do like about the album version is that they give the song time to breathe.
Yes.
With those pauses, they don't oversaturate it with stuff,
It's a very dramatic song.
and that's what it should be.
But live, the California Jam, where he's doing those little volume swells and everything, it's just...
Boy,
And you can just see the sea of people in front of him. It's...
and see, even this solo now is not a blues solo.
No.
This is like a rainbow solo.
Right, he's just kind of ascending on the minor scale up, one note at a time and just making it sound brilliant.
And you're
Coverdale
just
says...
using that. Oh.
Coverdale says it's like a progressive blues. I wasn't raised in a shack by the railroad tracks, but I've still had emotional hassles, and that's the only kind of blues I can interpret. I find it very hard because I knew it was essential to get the strong emotive quality of the song needs. The thing I wanted was for somebody who was listening to the song to think, I know what he's talking about, and the feeling, and then that song would be worth it. So they played this in Rainbow, Dio did it solo, Whitesnake played it, and Glenn Hughes also covered it with him singing.
I like the way the Dio did it.
I think Dio can do very little wrong in my eyes, but his voice worked very well for the song.
I mean, you can't be Coverdale on this song at all, but I would say if I didn't hear Coverdale singing it, I'd want to hear Dio singing it. Glenn Hughes, not as much, just because it's not really in his style.
Right, just the same way I probably wouldn't want to hear it. Coverdale does Holy Man, and it's like,
Yeah, same thing. It was interesting.
yeah,
but
it's great, but it's just not what you're looking for. So this part coming up here, where Coverdale and Hughes harmonize, I guess they spent all night working on that in the studio.
wow.
Try to get it right. We'll hear it in a second here. It's kind of low in the mix. I guess they spent all night working on it. Blackmore comes in the next morning, and he's like, you can't hear the guitar anymore. And he has them turn it like really low in the mix.
That son of a bitch.
It's classic. Harmonies are great, though.
Yeah.
Great way to end the song.
Yeah, I mean, it still was worth it.
And Hughes' bass playing on this is way underrated, too. He's got a lot of funky little things going on, which makes the song a lot more interesting than just kind of playing the root note. Well, you can kind of hear him exhaling on the end of that there.
Yeah, he does a lot of that later on in like early Whitesnake.
Yep.
where the song will be done and he'll just be like, he'll just be like out of breath. He'll be like,
See him when he plays it live. I mean, he's giving it so much you think he's gonna keel over, even at 22 or 23 or whatever. Never mind, in his 60s and 70s trying to do this.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he really does this anymore, but I would like to see him do it live.
I saw a video of him doing it very recently. Like some guy is like playing the acoustic guitar and he's singing it, and it's the same thing. He's just like giving it every single thing he's got. It's like you're like watching it, you're like, hey, careful there, Coverdale. It's like
we don't want to lose you.
It's like talking to your parents about not shoveling the snow anymore. It's like, Dad, maybe you should hire somebody.
Take it easy. Take it easy. Maybe you should hire somebody to do that vocal part. All right. So for me, easily like 4.5 for that one.
Yep. I had the same 4.5.
Yeah.
4.5 Pilgrim Hats for that, for Mistreated.
That's another one I don't get sick of listening to.
No. But I've got to say, if it was for the California Jam version, I'd probably give it 5. Oh,
absolutely. Like, I think, like, I'd give that one and You Fool No One. If I could give it, like, 6, I'd give it for the live one, just because I love the live one so much.
I can't wait till our California Jam episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Last up is A200. Instrumental close to the album. Not the most Deep Purple sounding beginning. It was originally titled Touching Cloth.
Okay.
This was written in the studio. And this is the first time I think they've had an 8th song on an album in, I don't know how long. All the Gillan Glover albums had 7 songs. It's interesting to me they closed with this out. It's a very odd instrumental, this marching sort of. And it's funny that not Strange Kind of Woman, When a Blind Man Cries, Demon's Eye, or Black Knight, depending on which version of the album you grew up with. None of those were good enough to make an 8th song on an album, but this they got onto the album for some reason.
Yeah, and it's weird. It almost reminds me of like a mid to later Black Sabbath instrumental.
Oh yeah. Yeah, good call.
Like something that might have been on Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, or Sabotage.
I was thinking like a Technical Ecstasy outtake. It also kind of reminds me of like the kind of instrumental vibe on some of the instrumental pieces on Butterfly Ball.
Oh yeah, okay, I hear it a little bit.
Like Magician Moth or something.
I mean, it's definitely a John Lord centerpiece.
So apparently, A200 was the name of a cream used to treat crabs.
What?
I know.
I thought it had some musical significance, like, it's an B of A or something. Like,
I always like his A220, A440. I thought it was like that, but I was like, why 200? That's not the right. Yeah. It's like somebody just woke up Blackmore. He's like, whoa, what's going on here? Woke the sleeping Blackmore.
The way he came in, like, it's like
he's still yawning. Wringing that neck for sure. Definitely got some interesting synth sounds going on in this. Not a straight organ. And it's when synths were before they got ruined in the 80s and then got fixed again. Let's just say that. But yeah, this interesting. So I got weird feelings about this one because I always kind of have a soft spot for it, but at the same time, like, why on earth didn't they just close this album with Mistreated? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that this song was needed.
True.
It's I enjoy listening to it when it's on. It's but it's just such an odd album closer. To me, this sounds like what you would hear at the beginning as an intro to another song. It's got that nice march going to it, and then it doesn't go anywhere though. Like if it morphed into like another song, or like if that was the intro to Coronarius Redig or something, and they got into that song and that song actually was fleshed out with lyrics, it could have been a cool closer. But I would have almost put that as like an intro to a song somewhere else earlier on the album and then close it with Mistreated, because it's such a great closer.
Yeah, true. I mean, that is. I mean, I can see it kind of being like this unusual kind of vibe that closes out the album. Like, it definitely sounds like I feel like it wraps up the album, but like you said, in kind of a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like Mistreated would have been a great way to end it, or like, I don't know. I feel like maybe Sail Away would have been a good closer. Like, if you wanted to talk about reordering the tracks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, just like thinking about like Sail Away, like it's the end of the album, it fades out, you know, that type of vibe. Like I could think of like maybe another, you know, definitely another type of song that would have, I guess, closed up. I mean, I guess it was like effective to close it. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm saying. I mean, it's an effective closer. Like, I feel like, okay, the album's done, but it's not like, you can tell they put it together in the studio. Although I will say that, like, compared to some other outtakes or stuff from the previous album, Richie's playing on this is still awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
it's an interesting little, I think of it more of as an interlude than a song. But the fact that it's an interlude makes it weird to close on. Like, if it was, I don't know, between, like, scrolling back here, like if they stuck it between, I don't know what's going on here in Mistreated, or, you know, between any other two songs, or closed out the first side of the album with or something, you know, it just seems such a weird, you know, hey, it's the friggin' Burn album. I love it. I'll always love it. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. But at the same time, I just think that's an odd choice for an album closer.
Yeah. So that being said, I'm giving it a 3.
Yeah, I gave it the same.
Just because it's good. It's not great. It's just good.
It's good.
What's that? So are we doing that bonus track or no?
I think we'll save that for our end of the band recap thing, because we've got like just like a couple of bonus tracks between this, Stormbringer, and Come Taste the Band, so we can wrap those all up when we talk about the end of the band, I guess.
Okay. Well, so far our highest rated album. Big surprise.
Not surprising at all. Nope.
Yeah, which Machine Head comes a close second, so that actually makes sense.
I'll say, and you know, Stormbringer gets a really bad rap, but having listened to it over the last couple of days, feeling pretty good about it. So I don't, you know, we're probably in the minority for our love for Stormbringer in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But you can definitely, in my mind, I was always kind of grouped Burn and Stormbringer together, but now I can see they're very different. And Stormbringer definitely goes way out in left field in a way that I never really thought about until we started doing this.
Yeah, which we can definitely discuss in our next episode.
Yeah,
in
tomorrow.
more in depth. You just ruined the magic. You ruined the magic for all the listeners.
The magic. There's no magic.
Yeah, the mystique
Mystique.
of the Deep Purple podcast.
Oh man, the veil has been pulled back.
Uh,
So there's only on the reels to this album, there's only 3 dates: November 8th, November 12th, and November 14th. So it's possible this album was completed in just 3 sessions, which is insane.
that's wild.
But they were in the studio for about 2 weeks before they returned home. And the album was mixed at Kingsway Studios, former Delane Lay Studios, which was owned by Ian Gillan. So, and interesting that they take it to Ian Gillan's studio to mix it. Martin Birch did Martin Birch did the mix, and Ian Pace was there just to make sure the drum levels were okay. He just was like kind of, and they're like, "Hey, bring up the hi-hat a little bit."
More cowbell,
So some quotes from the band. Glenn Hughes says, "It was too basic rock for me. I wasn't into that kind of material. I had to work with John and Richie to really get into that kind of music." Which is interesting to me because we listened to Medusa last episode, and it's like such a rock song. So,
yeah, and I actually listened to that album after we had talked about it,
Yep.
and I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I mean, I could see him wanting to go in a different direction from that, but I mean, he was just like, I don't know. Doesn't it suck when people are just so good at a certain type of music and they don't want to play it?
yeah, like Richie and funk.
Yes, exactly. That's the whole thing. Wow, this is really great. I hate it, and then they walk away from it. And they still do great stuff, but it's like such untapped
Yeah,
opportunity,
yeah, it's crazy, but I mean, you like what you like, I guess.
But I mean, why not would he join the band then if he didn't like this type of music? That doesn't make any sense. He could have stayed with Trapeze.
Pretty big payday for him, but.
Oh, maybe.
So John Lord says it had been worked on in rehearsal and thought out beforehand instead of albums where we just jammed in the studio until a song arrived. The only track where that happened was the instrumental, and that was only because I wanted to use a synthesizer. The album was released on, this is interesting that I found out. The album was released on the 15th of February, 1974, and it was almost late because of a worldwide shortage of vinyl.
Wow, that's
yeah, I never knew, like, I'm like, what vinyl? Like, are there like vinyl gardens or vinyl farms? Are they growing it? Like, what? I don't know. What is vinyl? I don't even know. Isn't it just wax? And it's a weird thing I'd never thought of. I don't know if maybe they just need the blank discs pressed or that's what they're talking about. But I should have made a note of where I read that, but I read it somewhere.
That's interesting.
The album hit number 3 in the UK, number 9 in the US, and number 1 in 4 European countries. And it had mostly positive reviews, but I'm going to read 2 standout bad reviews. One is, of course, from Rolling Stone.
So we can just roll our eyes.
They can never be happy with anything. And this is by Ken Barnes, April 25th, 1974.
Screw him already.
We're already pissed at him. Deep Purple's first album since last year's departure of vocalist Ian Gillan and bassist-composer Roger Glover is a passable but disappointing effort. On Burn, new lead singer David Coverdale sounds suitably histrionic, like Free's brilliant Paul Rodgers, rumored to have been Purple's first replacement choice. But the new material is largely drab and ordinary, without the runaway locomotive power of the group's best work. The title track is a notable exception, attractively energetic with appropriate speedy instrumental breaks, and Sail Away is a free-like mesmerizer. Mistreated again sounds like that lamented extinct group, but is flaccidly lengthy at 7 minutes and 25 seconds. They fill out the LP with the relentlessly mediocre single Might Just Take Your Life. Ooh. The blues rocker, What's Going On Here? The commonplace cream-like funk riffs and harmonies of You Fool No One, and with a tedious Moog Bolero instrumental retread applying the coup de grace. Much of the LP is skillfully wrought and likable, and the new lineup has potential, but the Gillan-Glover spark that created Highway Star and other memorable Purple smokers is regrettably absent.
You know what? He's flaccid.
Oh,
I
Ken
can't.
Paul.
You know what? It is more. It is interesting to hear the negative reviews on an album that we love so much.
Yeah, the negative reviews that were written before we were born too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to read like the vintage, like old reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the one that I had reached out to Jorg Planer about originally because I couldn't find an actual copy of it.
Was that the one that like would have cost you $90 a month?
It was going to cost me $90. I was like, I don't need to read it that bad. So where is it? So it is, here we go. So this is from the New Musical Express, Charles Shaar Murray's review. It was so bad the publication had to issue an apology in the next issue. because fans wrote in to complain, and even the band wrote in to complain. The band wrote,
Jesus.
the band I think took out an ad, and I don't have a copy of it, but it said something like, with friends like these, who needs NME, like New Musical Express, NME. So anyway, the apology reads like this. The NME wishes to apologize for Charles Shaar Murray, who's really quite an agreeable fellow and kind to his mother, too. Though standing foursquare behind his review, Mr. Murray would, if pressed, and particularly when held over a naked flame, concede that in a moment of heavy metal fatigue, he may have critical overkill in mistake for the one marked informed cynic. Sorry, critic. Nevertheless, does even CSM deserve the one-word message dispatched to him by Deep Purple and contain an anagrammic form at the end of his paragraph so as not to offend the more sensitive among us, sockball? And I looked that up earlier and I can't remember what it means, but it's basically like, it stands for something nasty. See if I can look it up real quick. Sockball. Oh yeah, it's an anagram of bollocks. So not, I don't know. I guess they couldn't print bollocks back then. I don't know. To Americans, that is not a concern. So the actual, yeah. So the band took out the ad to kind of counter it.
Wow.
To counter his review. That's how bad it was. So,
wow.
Where is the review? Oh, did I not put the review in here? I thought I had a copy of the review to read. It's not that bad, honestly. It's not as bad as they make it out to sound.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, it sounds like a public apology, like he swore on it or something.
Yeah, it's let's see if I can find it real quick from our friend Jorg Planer. I'm not finding it. Not off the top anyway. So some other stuff that came out about the album. Oh, Charles Shaar Murray's on Twitter. Oh, I should follow him.
Yes, you should.
He probably wouldn't like that. So Lester Bangs, after seeing the band in Detroit, said the concert was fantastic. Last time I saw this group in Detroit with Gillan and Glover, I thought they were a true trotting slop bucket. But this night they laid it on and stomped it out till I saw kids at the edge of the stage pounding on it with their fists, shaking their rangy manes in Javaro a mockery. It was heartening, to say the least. Roger Glover says, I listened to Burn with an as open ear as I could, and I liked some of it. I liked Sail Away, and I liked Might Just Take Your Life. I thought those two were very good. After all, I'm a fan of these people. I'm a fan of the way Richie played and John played and Pacey played. They're my idols. Richie's still my idol. What he did with the band back then, it's magnificent. The band booked the Starship, this big plane that they would fly around after this. It was rented, I think, by Zeppelin and Elton John, and other people used to fly in this plane. It had like a shower and a library and all this crazy stuff, and they'd fly around in it. And then, shortly after this album, Hughes started to go off the rails pretty quickly. It's with his drug problem.
Hmm.
Ian Pace on Coverdale at the end of the tour. When we saw David, it was like looking at an uncut diamond. We thought, he's good. Now, how can we make it shine? He needed a cutter, and the cutter was experience. The David we took to America is a quarter of the David we brought back. The song Burn would be their opener until 1976, and it would
Wow.
return. And would return in 1971 with Jolyn Turner. I'm sorry, in 1991 with Jolyn Turner,
Hmm.
which I don't recall ever hearing that, but that would be very
Yeah.
interesting. I guess they had to wait for Gillan to leave to play that. Rainbow played it. Whitesnake played it in Whitesnake. You used it as an opener for their 2003 tour. A few months after completing the album, Coverdale was playing at the California Jam on April 6th, 1974. I've heard like all sorts of figures. The low end I've heard at that, as far as attendance at that show, was 250,000. I've heard as much as 400,000 people.
Yeah.
So here he is, not even a year after, or 6 months later, he's 6 months after. Yeah. He's playing in front of 500,000 people almost.
Yeah.
The show set a record for attendance, amplification volume, and gross revenue. And, one day we will get to covering that concert, because I know it's a personal favorite of both of ours.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Burn album. There you have it.
Love it.
In all of its glory. I'm going to pause there for just a quick moment. All right. So that's Burn. It's time to... Any other final closing thoughts on Burn?
Just that I'm glad that we finally got to it. It was a long wait. I think that when we started the podcast, it was just kind of like we knew it was going to be torturous to have to wait this long.
Yeah, well, it was definitely torturous, especially through Mark 1. Once we got to Mark 2, I got distracted.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mark 1 wasn't that bad. I have to say that discovering how good the Deep Purple self-titled album was a nice surprise, and just working our way up, but just not being able to jump right to this stuff, which has always been admittedly our favorites, was very it was a long wait, and it was definitely worth it. So because I mean, and you could tell too, I mean, so far it's our highest rated album combined. So yeah, it's clear that we both love it, because we both love Coverdale and Hughes as well as the rest of the guys. But I would even argue that this is probably even like, I like this version of the band more than Mark II, but maybe that's something for another discussion.
I know that's sacrilege, but yes, I've always really, really enjoyed Mark II, and I'm sorry, Mark III and Mark IV.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been saying that for years.
Yeah,
it's just like they're the kind of the unsung lineup almost. So, but yeah, this is definitely a great album, and deserves all the accolades that it gets, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And some great live versions of these songs too. I think one of the best things about this album, as probably a lot of the early Deep Purple albums, was there wasn't a ton of production. I mean, there was some like effects and stuff on Richie's guitar and things like that. But I mean, these albums, they weren't like, the production, first of all, is great on this album. That's another thing about these albums, like after, like post In Rock, which sounded a little muddy, but it was like really good, was just like the production on all their albums was always so good. But it was live production. It wasn't what am I trying to say? The songs weren't production pieces. Like, they could be easily replicated live.
Right.
And that's why they're so good live, and that's why they're so good on the record, is just because they're just not overproduced and layered with like stuff that they couldn't do, or they could only do in the studio.
Mhm.
And so, and that's kind of cool. That's something that, you know, especially these days, you don't see very often anymore because everything's not analog and, you know, kind of old school. Everything's, you know, really, a lot of things can be really like processed. And like you said before, like, was it like stamp, like cut and paste
Yeah.
type of things, you know, just the sing the verse or sing the chorus once and then just paste it
Copy and
here and
paste it, yeah.
here. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's one of the reasons that I love this, and I love Hughes and Coverdale's contributions. They were like really eager and hungry and like energetic, and you could tell that they were excited to be working on the project and that everybody got along because the songs are like so much better than the last album. I mean, just side by side with Who Do We Think We Are? I mean, you could tell that the band was revitalized.
And it sounds like a different band. I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of people say, "Oh, that's not real Deep Purple." It's like, well, probably not. Like, probably should have been just called a different band. But you know, that's just not usually the way it works. There's too many financial interests involved.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the original wasn't the original concept of them to be like roundabout was like people just come on and get off and get on and go whatever it was, and it's like, and that's what the band actually wound up being, right?
That's what we talked about one of our first episodes. Yeah, like that it ended up turning out that way. You know, it was like they could at first they're like, "Oh, we're going to abandon that concept," but they didn't. It was always
Yeah, not really.
there's always a roundabout. So.
And I mean, it's true too. I mean, if you look at any bands, especially some of the bands like classic 70s and 80s bands that are still out touring now, they're going to use the same name as what's going to be a box office draw. So that it was the same thing back then. This is like, do you think they'd make as much money if they went and called it something else?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, you know, you find out like a year or two later, Blackmore didn't give a shit. He just
Right.
he just went and did Rainbow, and it's successful in his own right. But I mean, but yeah. Anyways, so that's yeah.
So that's Burn.
Burn. That's Burn.
All right, so we got some. So when this episode comes out, it'll be the week of August 19th through August 25th,
Yikes.
and we got some. I know, right? And here we go with some news or history. August 19th, 1945. This guy, Ian Gillan, was born. So Ian Gillan's birthday is coming up.
How old is he going to be?
1945 to 1974. Wait,
Wow.
is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Good for him. He looks great too. He still looks great. So yeah, Ian Gillan turning 74. Wow. August 19th. 3 days later, August 21st. Get out of there. Oh, it's in my way. We've got Glenn Hughes' birthday.
Whoa.
Glenn Hughes, August 21st, 1951. So I'll be turning 66,
Mm-hmm.
67, so 67. And one of the things that's in the Glenn Hughes book, it's an interview. I'm sorry I got to do this to you because it's killing me ever since I read it. And I showed my wife too, and she was like, "Oh my God," she couldn't believe it. But somebody in the book, I forget who, says that the thing about Glenn Hughes is that he looks like somebody. And if you look at Glenn Hughes, just take away the hair in your mind, look at the face, he looks exactly like Bob Hope. Look at him, look at his face. He looks like Bob Hope.
I have to see a picture of Bob Hope.
Well, just look at Glenn.
Why is that so funny to you?
No, it's just funny, like, because I never thought of it before. I never thought that Glenn Hughes looked like Bob Hope. Like, it's just such a weird thing. But somebody in the book was talking about it, about how
I'm sorry, I just pulled up a picture of Bob Hope, and he does.
that's what I'm saying. He looks exactly like Bob Hope.
Oh God, oh, young Bob Hope, not old Bob.
Well,
Hope.
yeah, of course, yeah, young Bob Hope. But
Just to clarify to everybody.
you just have to like just kind of imagine his hair, like the hair apart away, and he looks just like Bob Hope. It's crazy.
That's
I don't know. That just amuses me so much. And then another thing coming up on August 25th, 1970, would be the last performance of the concerto at the Hollywood Bowl when the great Hollywood winds came and blew the score into the ocean, never to be seen again.
Which that whole the score was blown into the ocean. That was our fan fiction, right? Like,
Yeah, you created that actually because
Okay.
we were because they the last time they performed the concerto at the Hollywood Bowl, they lost the score, and we had a lot of theories as to what happened. One of them was that Richie just like gathered them all up and like I don't know, burned them in a barrel somewhere, or that. But your theory was that just the wind just blew the whole score into the there's probably like 80 copies of it for every performer, and just all of them gone, missing. They lost it. They could never find it again. And we suspected Richie because he hated it so much. But
do you wonder if anybody, like, out of all those musicians, like maybe somebody kept it, and those musicians now, like the orchestra, are dead, and maybe somebody in their family or something is
going to the attic
somewhere. Like it has to be the original has to exist somewhere. I mean, since then, I know they've recreated it and stuff, but I mean, there's got to be a copy of it someplace.
You would think, like, or if it went into like the wrong box to get shipped back and it got lost, you think somebody would stumble upon it and say, "Huh, this looks like it could be interesting," or try to contact somebody. But yeah, at any rate, when they revitalized this in 1999, they had to recreate the score from scratch because all copies of it were lost. And the fact that they didn't have a backup copy somewhere or anything is insane to me. But there you go. It was the 70s.
Well, I mean, if they ever want to find the original, it's probably at the bottom of the ocean or something. I don't know.
I just picture like Richie going into his basement and like looking for stuff and is like, "Oh, here's all those boxes of the damn concerto." He's like he's been stashing them for 50 years, just hoping, like, he's still got them hidden, hoping no one will ever ask him.
Yeah, I could picture like Richie keeping them as like
He just
keeping them as
stole
like yeah, he stole them and he's keeping them as like a trophy, and occasionally he just goes in, he like lifts the top of the box off and he just looks at it and he just like chuckles to himself, and then like boxes it back up, pushes it in the corner, and like puts a bunch of like old rags and Christmas decorations and shit on top of it, and like just walks away.
one of his classic pranks.
That would be like 50 years later, he just like to like John Lord's like estate. Ha ha! He just like
He was probably planning on giving him back to John Lord eventually, and he died. He was like, "Oh man, it's not as funny anymore."
Richie's greatest prank ever. The axe, and then scaring Glenn Hughes, and then hiding the concerto for like 50 years.
Oh yeah, it's delivered to like Deep Purple management's like office, and it says like "Do not open till 2020." He's like, "I just figured we'd all be dead by then," but.
And then, they're just FaceTiming Richie, and he's just like, ah, and then he hangs up and goes and plays the lute or some shit. I don't know.
It's crazy to me. But anyway, that's the history for this week. That is the Burn album. Very excited to have gotten to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I was waiting for this. I was very excited all day.
And next week, we jump right into Stormbringer.
Yeah, next week. Oh, I have something in my eye.
Wink, wink. And next week, yeah, we'll see the album that it's so funny for Richie. It's like things going so well, the Burn album cooking, new lineup, so excited. Next album, he's done instantly. Like he's just like over it. Hate this band. I want out again. So
it's so weird too, because he's just like, he was established as the leader at that point. Like it's his band, and he could have just done whatever he wanted. He could have kicked them out or whatever. Instead, he just like, no, bye. And that's just, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get him.
No, I think very few do. All right. So there you have it. The Burn album. Great talking to you about that. And I'll catch up with you next week for Stormbringer.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Good night. Bye.
Have a good night. Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.